Welcome to the Genius Spark. I recently gave a keynote to a large conference and I got into the essence of where we developed Genius Spark, connecting with that younger self where the genius was clear and reside, and how did we lose it and how do we gain it. So a little bit of my background. I have a podcast called Resilience Lab. Of course, you know about Genius Spark. There is River Rose. That's the retreat center that we have 2 hours south of Dallas in Glen Rose. We just had a group of national leaders here for a 2-day summit on the future of work. Mindshift is the consulting side, the research side, the book writing side. Most of the content that I post is on LinkedIn, so just stick with us on LinkedIn. Here's a picture of River Rose. It's a beautiful 19-acre facility on the Paluxy River. Beautiful place to come with your group, especially in the spring and especially in the fall. In the spring, it's all the wildflowers. In the fall, the weather is changing, and it's a beautiful time. When we talk about our younger self, what I'd like you to think about is go back in time. And we have 3 relationships with that younger self. When I did the keynote, one of the individuals came up afterwards and wanted to know if he was doing the right thing because he was very connected to that younger self and what you might call a better version of that. In fact, he didn't leave those early passions and those inclinations, and he stuck with it, and he's found a nice sweet spot in his life and his work. That's one relationship, that we stay friends and we become that better version. For me, I became a stranger to my 5-year-old self and didn't begin to rediscover and reconnect with that until I was in my 40s. And then there are some, because of circumstances or just life in general, when they look at that younger self, they look with regret. They feel like they missed something. A lot of times that happens to people in their 40s to their 60s. We call that a midlife crisis. And I'll share some stories about that. Walt Disney said that the real problem that we have today is that we have too many copies and not enough originals. And the real trouble with the world is too many people grow up. Let me give you a roadmap of where I'm going to take you today. The first part is what we call the genius factor. We once were geniuses and we lost it. A second is to kind of go against the grain of finding our why. And the research is very clear, and we're very focused that before you can find your why, you've got to really know who you are at your best. And that makes finding your why a lot easier. Thirdly, how do we reignite that hidden genius? And the clue is it's hidden underneath your natural talents. In other words, what you naturally do best and enjoy most. And number 4, how can we use and apply sports science to move and become that better version of ourselves? And once you're in this flywheel, this practice of reinforcing who you are at your best and rehearsing it and reflecting on it, you're going to find that within a short amount of time, you're going to experience more success, more passion, and more purpose. Now, this is an image of me in 1978, and this is where my story begins. I moved to Dallas. I was a tennis professional, and I met a girl. And that girl was going to become my wife. So my days playing tennis, at least professionally and teaching, were coming to an end, and I needed a job. At that time, there was a company called Southwestern Bell, now AT&T, and they were going through radical change. They were moving from analog technology, the rotary phone where you hear the click, click, to digital technology. They were being broken up in divestiture, so restructure, new technology, and they were moving into these new kind of open cubicle office environments. And I was hired as a project manager. In those 3 years, I got a lifetime worth of experience on how projects run and the whole process of design, construction, facilities. What that allowed me to do is go up the ladder of success in my career. But what was really happening is I was like that frog in the pot. Slowly, the temperature was rising because I was taking opportunities, not because they were aligned with my values or aligned with who I was wired to be, but because they were the next step up the ladder. All of the actions I took were logical steps with great companies. However, they weren't aligned, and I like to say I became successfully normal, which is where most people are. And then something happened as I climbed the ladder and experienced success. The dot-com crash hit in 2000, and then 9/11. Our company lost 70% of its revenue in a short amount of time. I had moved my family from Virginia to Dallas, Texas. One day I come in the office, the owner meets with me, rips up my 10-year contract and said, "We don't need a VP of sales, we need sales." Immediately, my whole life was turned upside down. And I had to confront some realities of what that misalignment meant in my family, in my career, in my health. I was 50 pounds heavier than I am today, which you can see here. This is my son Nathan, 16 years old. I was not a good dad, very stressed out, and not a present husband. I was almost in bankruptcy 5 times, juggling credit card debt for 5 years. This was my dark time. And so I rebuilt from scratch: health, relationships, and career. I was thrown a lifeline because in 2000, the book Now Discover Your Strengths came out with the first version of the Clifton Strengths. I read the book, took the assessment, light bulbs went off in my mind as to why some things, even though I was good at it, I had very little passion. In fact, it was stressful. Why some other areas I loved doing. So slowly I began to shift my energy and my efforts, still in the sales arena, but doing it in ways that were more aligned to how I was wired. Maslow also said back in the 1950s that there's something innate in us. We have this inner drive, this inner understanding of potential, who we could be. And he said, what we can become, we must. It's an imperative, like a drowning victim. For us to feel satisfaction and fulfillment, we have to become our full selves. That's the self-actualization side of the hierarchy. And in the book, we go through how we reframe Maslow's whole process and that hierarchy, which was never his. Some people came up later and looked at it as a ladder. But self-actualization takes place, becoming your best self, needing to be your best self at all those levels that we talk about. 15 years after I'm into my story during the pandemic, I started finding people in their mid-40s to 60s whose projects have been halted, whose careers have stopped, whose companies don't need them anymore. And we've all been guilty of being on that treadmill every day, repeat, without stepping back, reflecting, and asking, is this what we were designed to do? Is this what I enjoy doing? Is this creating the kind of family life I want? And oftentimes we feel trapped. And I heard those stories during the pandemic. Part of the motivation for my accelerating, developing the process around the Genius Spark. This misalignment begins at a very early age. Sir Ken Robinson gave what is now the most watched TED Talk of all times. He's no longer alive, but in 2005, his TED Talk was "Do Schools Kill Creativity?" I had the pleasure of meeting him. We created an education conference called EdShift in Dallas as an experiment. We hired Ken Robinson to come. We got to hear some of his behind the scenes story and why he was so passionate about kids being unique and how the system of industrialized learning, assembly line learning, kills that creativity. What most people didn't realize is he was referencing research from NASA. I tracked the research down, and George Land, another person who did a TED Talk on this very topic, developed an assessment during the Apollo program to help NASA pick the best and brightest to go to the moon. And it's called the Imaginative Index. It's a very simple assessment or test to take. Look at this water. Pick up any object around. Here's a little soda can. The question was very simple. How many uses can you think of this object? And then they measured the number of ideas, the usefulness of the ideas, and the novelty of the ideas, and had a ranking system. Because of the simplicity of the assessment, George Land decided to test it with 1,600 kids in the Head Start program. And the Head Start program are for preschoolers. Here's the amazing thing he discovered. 98% of them tested as geniuses. But then here's where Ken Robinson picks up the story. By age 10, it drops to 30%. By age 15, it drops to 10%. By age 30, 2%. And after assessing another 280,000 adults, only 2% of us maintain that connection to that genius capacity that we once had. And so how do we regain that? Walt Disney talks about that the more you are like yourself, the less you are like anyone else, which makes you unique. So this gives us a very clear roadmap on how to go back to that unique factor that we had. Michael Vance, a protege of Walt Disney, and someone I got to meet and know, was Dean of Disney University, one of the original people involved in Epcot, said that it's the unique factor that we're attracted to. And then he would humorously say, no one wants to go to like Disney. So I want you to stop for a second and reflect on what did you love doing when you were at that age, that younger self? Think about it. Write it down. And then, what did others praise you for? What did you hear? What do you remember? Thirdly, what came easy to you? These are signs of how you're naturally wired to be at your best. I want you to see that the clues of genius are evident in the youngest of children. I'm going to show you a video of a toddler that's about 2.5 years of age, but I want you to watch what you think this child's unique way of navigating the world, solving problems, imagine this child might be. Did you see that? What did you notice in this child that's unique? Did you notice the methodical approach, testing each item and then organizing it and ordering it, the pace that he operated on, where he was most absorbed? These are indicators. If you have young kids and even older kids, as parents or as teachers, these are some of the things that we need to pick up on because we want to preserve this quality. I know full and well that when this 2.5-year-old goes into school, and if he goes into the industrialized school system that we have and becomes part of the assembly line, the school will try to put him in a box and constrain his approach to things. He will need to conform. He will no longer have the leisure and the luxury to take time to test. He won't have that luxury. So the question I have for kids and teachers is, how do we preserve those genius traits and genius qualities, because they drop so quickly in that mechanized assembly line environment that we call education? Here's me at 5 years old, and this is the school I went to, Westgate Elementary. The story is about my first grade teacher, who I really didn't know much about until my mom passed away in 2019. And then in the early days of the pandemic, my sister sent a box of all the memorabilia that Mom kept for me, all the things. She kept news articles about friends who had bought houses. You see, this is one of those go to the mall, get your picture taken type of things with envelopes. All the envelopes were there with the receipts, but none of the pictures. Now, at the very top were my first grade report cards. And in the report card, Mrs. Devoe left a message for my mom. Her name's Dolores. She said, "Dolores, Rex loves the research projects and share what he's learned in front of the class. He's a wonderful storyteller. One day I can see he'll be a writer." I froze and started bawling. I had written 7 books by that time, and I loved to tell the stories and write in story format. I was 65 years of age before I knew what she knew. And I asked, what did she see? And why did I not see it? Why did it take me so long? In the previous part of the presentation, I told you why. Because I went through a system designed to take that away and get you to conform to a norm. In 2 of the books on education that I wrote, we found that the school system works great for about 50% of the kids. But then there's 25% that are what we call those one-off kids. They have learning differences. And then there's another 25% because of socioeconomic reasons. When did you begin to play it safe? I reflected back and wondered, where did I begin to disconnect from those things I was naturally curious about? I always had my hand up when I was younger to speak. And then I wanted to play it safe. And I only made sure I raised my hand when I was right or I knew it cold. 3rd grade was for me. The reason is that I was diagnosed with a speech impediment and a learning disability. I subvocalized. I had a hard time reading and comprehending. So 2 days a week, one day I would go down to the speech therapy office and the other day I would go to the reading lab. That made me feel like something was wrong with me. And so I compensated for that. I gave up some things that were natural assets for me that I've since learned are natural assets to be able to fit in, be accepted. When did that happen for you? Now, I'm going to play another video. This is America's Got Talent. Part of the reason I like these is that there are some people who come up, showcase their talents, and you wonder, didn't any friends or family suggest that this is not a good idea for you? And then there are those like Susan Boyle. I can remember when she first walked out and she blew people away. So let's watch this and then I'll unpack it at the end.
Welcome back to America's Got Talent. It's coming to the end of a long day here in New York. And as the auditions draw to a close, there's just one act left to see the judges. Meet 36-year-old car washer, Landau.
Today I don't feel like.
What up, man?
What's good, Nick?
How you?
I'm good.
What's your name?
My name is Landau Murphy Jr. I'm Landau Eugene Murphy Jr. I'm from Logan, West Virginia. I'm 36 years old. I've been washing cars for about 10 years, but my real dream is to come sing for the world, and I'm here to show America that I have talent.
'Cause today I swear I'm not doing
Never auditioned for nothing.
nothing at all.
Just been washing cars. I've washed thousands and thousands of cars. I've scrubbed so many BF Goodrich tires, I don't want to see another piece of rubber again. I've been up to here in bubbles, and now it's just time to go somewhere else.
Let me see you put it down.
Why are you laughing at Howie?
I love Howie. I love you, dude.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very
Since
nice.
little Bobby.
My name is Bobby.
That's pretty good.
I remember that.
All right, then. What's your name?
My name is Landau Eugene Murphy Jr.
Landau, are you chewing gum?
Yes, I am.
I wouldn't do that when you're
Want me to
performing
take it
in this show, seriously.
Thank you. That's better. Where are you from, Landau?
I'm from Logan, West Virginia.
Okay.
Yes.
And what are you going to do for us today?
Well, I do all kind of music, but tonight I'm just trying to follow my dream.
And what do you do for a living?
I was recently washing cars out, my new car detailer.
All right. Well, good luck.
Thank you. I would sacrifice anything, come what might, for the sake of having you near, in spite of the warning voice that comes in the night and repeats how it yells in my ear. Don't you know, you little fool, you never can win. Why not use your mentality? Get up, wake up to reality. And each time I do, just the thought of you makes me stop just before I begin. Because I've got you under my skin. And I like you under my skin.
That's talent. He belongs in Vegas.
Was there a tape playing? Were you miming?
No, I was not. That's my real voice.
Yeah, I gotta say, you were such a surprise. You know, the look versus the music that you were doing is. I did not expect it.
That's what I did.
I personally am a huge fan of Frank Sinatra. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And you talk about bringing things back. What better way to bring it back than with your look and who you are?
Yes.
So, Landau, you come out on this stage chewing your gum, doing your silly Bobby impressions and your
Yes.
Howie Mandel hero worship. And I'm thinking this is going to be total train wreck, if I'm honest. I thought, honestly, I really did. I just thought, this guy's not serious.
Right.
And then you began to sing, and I couldn't believe quite what I was hearing. I really couldn't. And what I like about you is I don't think you really know how good a singer you are. Have you ever auditioned for anything before?
Never in my life.
This is your first ever audition for
First
anything?
ever audition in front of anybody.
First audition, and he blazed it.
You are a very unusual talent. You're the kind of reason that we like doing the show, because you come out of nowhere, you've never auditioned before in your life, and you have a natural, God-given talent.
Your life is never going to be the same. I'm telling you, you just changed your whole life.
We're gonna vote. Okay, here's.
Lando, I can see you're emotional. You're probably emotional because, as I say, you didn't know how good you were. And now you do. So I'm going to say yes.
Come on. You know what it is. Yes.
See you in Vegas.
Thank you, New York.
Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York.
Amazing.
That was great.
Amazing.
I just never knew it, man. I never knew that they would love me like this.
That was one of the most surprising moments we've ever had.
I love it.
So, what did you see and what did you feel? Because we don't have the opportunity to hear what you're thinking, I'll share with you what several other audiences have said. One, they noticed how the judges prejudged him. You see the body language and the tone. Number two, he looked like his natural self. He was just playful, outgoing, uninhibited. He did win the $1 million. He did release a jazz album in January of 2024. So how did this individual washing cars with this beautiful voice, why was it never encouraged, seen, rewarded 36 years before he discovered his natural genius? And I'll refer to this again, but think of genius this way. What comes easy and naturally for me, but looks like magic to you, that's our genius. And then his reaction to this. I never knew they would love me like this. When you're operating in what you naturally do best and enjoy most and get to experience the engagement, the dopamine, the endorphins of being in that zone and other people loving what you're doing because what you're doing looks like magic, feels like magic, whether it's care for others, analyzing a spreadsheet, knowing what it takes to get something done, building deep, genuine relationships, all of those different kinds of things that for others are not easy or intuitive, but they are to you, and you take it for granted. You underestimate the power that's inside. And part of it is that you've lost touch to that power, what it feels like, and now we want to figure out how to find it. So let's now look at finding your why, or what has become popularized as finding your why. The work by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, two professors in Stanford, started dealing with a generation coming up who felt like they lacked purpose. They didn't know how to find where to invest their energy and effort in a way that would be meaningful for them. They began the research and they found something very simple. Play to your strengths, develop mastery in an area, and out of that, you will become passionate and you will excel at it. And the new book, The Algebra of Wealth by Dr. Galloway, also reinforces this. Find out what you're naturally good at and master. Get to be one of those top 10% and prepare for the long journey. I was very fortunate. when I moved from tennis into project management, I literally got 10 years worth of experience crammed into 3 years. And I learned mastery in that area. Now, did I love project management? No. But what I loved is solving problems, getting things done, building teams, seeing all the dynamics of that. So underneath what we think we're passionate about, there's a deeper underlying thing, and that's how we're wired. So you can imagine that there's many things I could have done that would have tapped into that sense of making decisions in real time and being able to pivot quickly, getting things done and having the drive and persistence and the focus, building trust with others, being curious, knowing how to connect the dots. And I use all of those, and Gallup's research is very clear that if you're using your natural strengths consistently throughout the week, you're more productive, things come easier for you, the work that you do looks better, is better, and you get that extrinsic reward of other people's recognition. Where does the assessment come into? Over the past 25, 30 years, psychometric tools that we've developed have given us all kinds of avenues and vistas into understanding who we are at our best that we've never had before. So this accelerates the ability to get a roadmap to uncover what you naturally do best and enjoy most. What makes the Clifton Strengths different from some of the others, it's not a personality assessment. It's measuring are the strongest parts of your brain, the parts that fire strong and fast, and then the chemicals that come out of that create this virtuous cycle of engagement and rapid learning. What Donald Clifton wanted to do over 60 years ago is address a problem he felt was in the psychology world. And that problem is that the industry focuses on minimizing the deficit instead of optimizing the upside. In other words, they focus on what's wrong instead of what's strong. He researched over 2 million people over a span of several decades and found that there were certain themes that were measurable. And the common denominator in all these happy and successful people is that they play to their strengths. So finding these themes and being able to develop an assessment to identify those areas that fire the fastest in your brain was a breakthrough. And because it's so accessible, it's very affordable. So millions and millions of people have taken it. Most of those individuals who've taken it have not gotten the full benefit, and we'll tell you why and how you can. So let's imagine that this is your brain. The river down the center are the top 5 strengths in the Clifton Strengths. Then the strengths 6 through 10 are tributaries feeding in. Then you have streams and creeks and dry beds. For me, my bottom 2 strengths of harmony and empathy, those are dry beds. If I'm pouring water down there, then they're flowing, and that water is effort. But as soon as I stop, they go back to being dry beds. My family likes to joke with me, Dad wants to care, but he doesn't. The little light bulbs we see in this image here, those are some of the chemicals that fire off when you're activating your strengths. And the number one hormone that you're activating is dopamine. Dopamine is that fun, pleasure, do it again hormone. But then when you get into the zone, when you're into that flow state, those are endorphins. When you're in relational rhythm and things are moving well, psychological safety, openness, and trust, that's serotonin. When you're into deep levels of intimacy, that's oxytocin. This is part of what Gallup measures to see if an employee is engaged or not. If they're using their strengths, then they're getting the intrinsic rewards of these chemicals. Now, the opposite is also true. If you're not playing to your strengths, it's harder work. The results aren't as good. You're not getting recognition for great work. And you're emitting a hormone called cortisol, or that's the stress hormone. So this is a huge understanding, and part of what we teach is the neurohacking of sports science. The reason why most people don't get the benefit of whatever assessment they take is they give you lots of content. So that gives you understanding, gives you insight, but it doesn't cross the bridge into transformation because it's all cognitive. We don't change because of information. We change because of the story and how we're telling our brain to operate. And that's where we come in. This is the sports science. We help you generate a paragraph of what you look like at your best. And the essence of what you want to know, what are my strengths? What's my style or personality? That's the ring on the left. And you can see 60% is green, 20% orange, 20% blue. And you've got a summary of my leadership style, my genius paragraph, and how my strengths get in my way. We call that kryptonite. It's all I need to know. The rest of it is a daily practice applying sports science. The brain is a servo mechanism. It's a guidance system. It's a goal-seeking organ. And in the 1970s, Maxwell Maltz wrote a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, how the brain orients itself towards the strongest goals that you give it. When we look at the work of Tversky and Kahneman in terms of behavioral economics, what we find is that because the brain is the most calorie-consuming organ, it conserves all its energy to two things. One, what do I desire and want? And two, what could kill me? The rest of the time, it operates in habit form or default mode. What athletes understand is that if they set a criteria and desire it and rehearse it over and over, like a musician doing scales, like an athlete doing drills over and over, we call it muscle memory. What's really happening is, remember that brain and the firing. Your neurons are covered by a protein called myelin. It's a sheath, and it's like the insulation on electrical wires. The thicker it gets, the stronger and faster the signal. The more we repeat something over and over, and the more we go back and imagine ourselves doing something, the thicker the coding, the stronger the signal. And that's why what we've discovered is that when you vividly imagine and rehearse something in your mind, it has a 90% correlation to physically doing it. And that's why athletes have shifted to this kind of mental rehearsal, whether it's Michael Phelps or Rory McIlroy as a golfer, or many of the concert pianists. And it's something I do every day with my genius paragraph. So consider that paragraph your performance criteria, similar to an athlete. I want to perform at this level in this meet, and it gets very specific, the timing, where I need to be at certain places in the pool if I'm a swimmer. The same thing applies for me. I want to perform at my best. Now I have a paragraph that gives me a description of that. Like with any guidance system, the clearer the signal and the more frequent and accurate the feedback, the more my brain naturally moves in that direction. So again, this is a neurohack using sports science. The process, the daily practice, and the ladder that we climb, on the left, the first thing I do is I read my paragraph each morning. Now, I've been doing it long enough where I've got different versions of the paragraph for different days. I've got poetry versions because I want to keep my brain fresh and listening to it from several different angles over and over again. Now, the rehearsal side, and this is the neurohack, is that I will look at my calendar and I will ask, how am I going to show up at my best for this LinkedIn Live? Then my brain begins to work on it. I don't know if you can remember a time when you had a question that you got stuck, and then later during the day, whether you were driving, riding a bike, or taking a shower, boom, the answer came. The brain keeps working on it. It's the reticular activator part of the brain. Or if there's something you desperately desire or really want, you will begin seeing evidence all over the place in the universe of this thing that you're wanting. Or if there's a fear side of the equation, you will see and imagine those things coming in. That's how the brain operates. Let's use it for what we want. So first, we have to reinforce it by reading it. Second, just look at the calendar, ask the question. That's all I do. There's a feedback part of it from others, and I'll skip that for now. And in the evening, I will reflect. And in my practice, in my journal, I do a couple things. One is gratitude. Several years ago, I didn't believe that was really effective, and I thought it was fuzzy-wuzzy horoscopy. But positive psychology, Dr. Seligman, Ahmed Sood at the Mayo Clinic, all have tested in that when you just do 3 expressions of gratitude a day and why, it has the same positive impact in reducing stress and depression as Prozac, about 40% reduction. That reflection part is key because you've opened up a story in the morning. How am I going to show up at my best? You've got several things throughout the day where you were showing up. And I like to think of us as cognitive athletes. We're competing and performing based on our knowledge and our ability to be our best self. At the end, you always want to know, did I show up at my best? Where did I show up at my best? What did that look like? And how did it connect to how I'm wired? When you add that reflect part, you close the loop. If you don't do the evening part and close the loop, it's like creating what we call a sandcastle day. You built something all day long, it gets washed away. All of us can remember things that just before we go to bed, I want to remember this, it's a great idea, and then when we wake up, it's gone. We have to have a way to cement it in. So the journal and the reflection and tying it to how I'm wired trains the brain, and what happens is that you get more instinctive, more confident, and you trust what we might call your gut. But remember, that stuff called your gut is the brain wiring. There's 2 sides to that brain wiring. There's the magic side and the survival side. Let's go to the latter. The first step of the ladder is when you get the assessments back, it's, oh, cool, interesting. And you're fascinated, it's fresh, and you don't understand everything, but you're getting some understanding and some new insight into who you are. Then you begin to understand, well, what does this really mean? What does empathy really mean? I don't have any empathy. Is that a problem? Empathy is that instinct to put myself in someone else's shoes and sense what they're experiencing and be able to articulate it. I can't do that instinctively. But as I've learned, I'm up the ladder in that mastery level, I've learned how to use my top 5 strengths as a second language. If empathy for some is a first language, instinctive and natural, not for me, but I have other strengths that I can use almost like a second language to help me function, be effective, even though it's not instinctive. Then you begin to tie this, you begin to see, I've repeated my paragraph. Now I'm starting to experience, oh, that's what achiever looks like and feels like. Oh, I just checked that off. Man, that felt great. I'm ready for the next thing. So you begin to tie your experience and your feelings to what you understand. And then as you go, you start seeing, oh, this is how it gets in my way. When I'm under pressure, my strategic and achiever becomes very narrow, very focused, very direct, and can feel like to others that I'm either blunt, uncaring, maybe even angry because of my directness in it under pressure. So that kryptonite pushing it too far under pressure, or I can be operating in a way where I'm leaving people behind. That's one of my kryptonites with strategic. I'll assume what's clear to me is clear to you. So when I'm in the flow, like now, and I have no feedback at all to go with, I'm experiencing the dopamine hits, just sharing the learning. That's my learner, but I may not be aware of how you're experiencing it. That's the second way my strengths can get in my way, unawareness of what it feels like on the other side of you. Now, once you learn how to perform under pressure, you're going to move into where it becomes second nature. It's completely natural, instinctive, and you trust your gut. If you have relator as a strength and you meet somebody where your radar goes off, that what we call the bullshit meter goes off, then you may not do anything overt, but you may be a little cautious and want to vet more. But you now are starting to trust those feelings. The cortisol is an indicator of the survival side. Something's not right, whether it's achiever or empathy or positivity or develop, whatever it is. You've got a survival side of that, and you've got a chemical reaction that you'll become in tune with. Finally, we've added this recently, the virtue side. I was working with a very successful salesperson, 8-figure salesperson in Iran, and he's tall, he's handsome, and he's young, and he's got strengths that are high action, activator, great problem solving, arranger. He's got significance, which is that do important things, competition, win, relator, build trust. And he would share stories with me on how effective he is building trust and closing a sale. One day when it didn't sound quite right to me, I said, David, you're masterful when it comes to using your strengths to get what you want. But the essence behind relator is a genuine friend. Is that who you are when you're in this mode? So he went away, stopped and thought about it. And he contacted me a couple weeks later, said, Rex, you have changed my life. And he shared a story about this restaurant because of this one person that he never built a relationship with. He did. And then a couple months later, he gets engaged and gets married. So that's the happy ever after story. But there is the best and highest use or application of each of these strengths. I want to ask you, what is your magic trick? Think about it, because you underestimate it. What is so easy, so natural, you may even take it for granted, but to others, they say, wow. Here's what I want you to start doing. When you experience or encounter someone where what they do gave you a little bit of that wow factor, their friendliness, their thoroughness, their questions, whatever it is, and you say, wow, that was insightful. You're going to be amazed when you acknowledge and recognize that, how it lights people up. One of the things we crave the most but get the least is direct, practical, usable feedback that lifts us up. And we do this in teams. We help people develop their genius paragraphs, share it, have others give them examples. We have all kinds of reactions from, wow, that was awkward or uncomfortable but felt good. Or we've had people break down and cry and say, I've never known that what I do is appreciated. We had one person say, I thought this was an irritant to everybody. She was very organized. And people were saying, no, we need this. We don't hear that. Your kids don't hear that. I've got stories how after I've learned this and started giving new and different kinds of feedback to my kids, how it really has helped them blossom in certain areas. So we're going to end with a final exercise. I want you to think about some highlight moments in the last 24, 48 hours. Times when you felt energized, you felt great, you were highly productive, people reacted positively. I want you to get that in your brain. If you've taken an assessment before or anything like that, the next step is connect it to what the assessment says are your natural strengths. This is it. This is the exercise. This is what you can do. We do this with our teams, and it's amazing when in a team meeting, when the manager says, hey, let's stop for a minute, think about some great opportunities or times that you had in the last 24 hours, tie it to your strengths, and people start recognizing that and saying it, energy picks up. People start seeing and making connections. Oh, when Joe does this and when Sally does that. And it builds these common bonds, but more importantly, it's creating confidence in those individuals that, yeah, this is my magic. This is my magic, and I can do more, and I can feel more comfortable and take more risk with it. Here's my offer. If you take the Clifton Strengths and send us your results of your top 5, we will enter them in our software and send you a report like the one you saw of mine with my top 5 strengths, my ring, my genius paragraph, kryptonite paragraph. We'll show you how to create your paragraphs. We'll do that for free. You can also do this with any assessment. And I've done this, and it's in our book on how to do it. And what you want to do is take whatever report you got, get a red pen, start underlining the sentences that you feel, this captures me at my best. It's manual work. You're going to have to compile it. That's how we started 15 years ago, is just manually doing this and copying it onto a sheet of paper and writing it. Then we started using Google Docs, and now we have an app that does it. But you can do it with any assessment. Begin to filter out all the noise of all this content to narrow in. Remember, all you want to know is who I am at my best, and get as clear and vivid and compelling a picture as you can. How I get in my way, and then in a team environment, I want to be able to appreciate the uniqueness that others bring, and then how to bridge that. Remember the disciplines. We call it bookend days. I got that from Brian Johnson. He's an incredible coach and teacher. But in the morning, I read my paragraph. That's the reinforce. Then I look at my calendar. That's the rehearse. I'll get feedback from others throughout the week, but in the evening, I just cherry pick a few highlight moments, what it felt like, what strengths does it tie to, and that's the routine, that's the practice. So this is my grandson, the one in the video that you saw. A lot of this I do because I don't want my grandson to wait until he's 65 years old to know that his granddad or others saw the genius and just let it drift away. So I appreciate your time. If you have any questions at all, please reach out. We love what we do. We'd love to help you. Take care.